Hi, I'm Patti Parker, and you are listening to My Friends in Philanthropy. Our mission is to make nonprofit stories more accessible to the people who need their services, to the volunteers who give their time, and to the donors who make it all possible. Join us as we celebrate community impact through authentic, inspiring conversations. Hi, everyone, and welcome to My Friends in Philanthropy. Today, we are talking to my friend, Erinn Andrews. She has a very interesting organization called the GiveTeam, and I'd like you guys to learn more because I think it'd be very beneficial. Hi, Erinn.
Hi, Patty. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so glad to be having this conversation with you today.
Me too. This is just absolutely awesome. Erinn, why don't you tell me who you are, what you do, and who you serve?
Thank you so much, Patty. I would love to tell you more about my work and my organization. And maybe I'll start by just saying at a high level what we do at GiveTeam. We do philanthropic advising, but there are many philanthropic advisors out there. And so it's really important to understand how we fit within this landscape, what our distinctions are, and how we're really innovating in this space to be the people to help the helpers, as you like to talk about it that way,
Yeah,
Patty.
right.
So let me just give you a tiny bit of background to understand why I started GiveTeam. So I'm the founder and CEO of GiveTeam. I started it almost 4 years ago now to really create a new type of philanthropic advising model to be more accessible to more Americans. I
Okay.
really wanted to come up with an approachable advising model that wouldn't take over someone's life, but was still very personal, very meaningful, and very impactful in the work that they do. So, before I started GiveTeam, I was working at Stanford University running a research lab on effective philanthropy, interviewing donors to understand what worked for them, what didn't work, where were their gaps and opportunities. I also was working with financial advisors to understand what they felt good about in terms of talking about charitable planning with their clients and what challenges they had. And I just had some really interesting observations from that work and that research.
Uh-huh.
As I looked at the philanthropic advising landscape, what I saw was there were so many philanthropic advisors supporting donors in the top 1% or half of 1% of givers.
Yeah.
These are individuals who are giving away many millions of dollars per year, and that's great. And we need to support those folks. It's obviously going to be very.
However,
However, there were lots of wealthy individuals, wealthy donors out there who weren't giving away millions of dollars. They were giving away tens of thousands of dollars each year or hundreds of thousands of dollars each year. And it would never occur to them to hire somebody for a 12-month engagement at $50,000 to help them deploy $30,000 in annual charitable giving, or even 100,000, right? And
okay.
so I just saw this big gap in terms of how do we serve donors? I see them in the top 2 to 10% of givers. This is not net wealth. This has to do with their annual giving. So these individuals are giving 10K per year up to about $1 million per year. So
Okay.
donors in that segment, I found, just needed something different than what the philanthropic advisors in the landscape were offering. They needed something that was lighter touch, still completely personal. This is a very personal process, and less time consuming, and at a reasonable price point that wasn't going to box them out of being able to access some support.
Right.
The
Okay.
other thing I found was that donors, um, who I was interviewing at Stanford, all these donors, they were giving reactively. They were giving to their alma mater. They were giving to their kids' school. They might be giving to a religious group or a local food bank, something like that. But they were giving
Okay.
when asked. And many,
Okay. I get that.
yeah, right. They're sort of giving reactively, giving when asked. And people often get sort of stuck in that rut of pretty much feeling like obligated that they need to be giving when asked. But many of them had a wealth event or had more money in their donor advised fund or had more resources and they wanted to do more, but they didn't know how to do it. They didn't know how to move from this reactive giving toward intentional, purposeful giving, where they're in the driver's seat and they know what to say yes to and what to say no to. That was
Interesting.
the really big sticking point.
Hmm?
So what I
Yep.
found in my work was donors really need three things in order to move toward purposeful intentional giving.
I'm
First,
taking notes if you wonder
take
what I'm doing.
notes. Yes, good. So, for all of you listeners, three things. Get your notes ready. The first thing they need to know is what they want to fund on purpose, which causes, which communities, which geographies are important to them. That's going to form the basis of their charitable mission statement or their charitable strategy. Then the second thing they need to know is how much can I afford to give? What's the right vehicle? Which are the right assets to donate? The tax strategy pieces, okay? The sort of the toolbox, the mechanics. And then the third thing they need to know is which nonprofits are out there doing great work aligned with their goals from that first step. Now you have the basis for a strategy that you can execute on. If you just set up a donor advised fund or you just set up some kind of charitable giving vehicle, you have a tool. You do not have a strategy. You are not deploying those resources, right? You just have
Uh-huh.
a toolbox that might be getting, rusty in the garage. Without those other pieces, you're not actually moving into your intention of purposeful giving that's aligned with your values and what you care about. So those were the three things. And as I thought about this philanthropic advising landscape and the gaps that I saw, this was the impetus behind starting GiveTeam. I wanted to create a scalable philanthropic advising model that still relies on human beings. I don't believe we can replace humans.
No.
Human conversation, you have to listen, you reflect back. It's deeply emotional. There are things that you have to read between the lines, body language, all of those aspects that AI can't replace. So I needed a human-centric advising model, but what is the least amount of time it takes to do some of these things, to build a thoughtful
Right. Because
strategy?
we're all very busy, right?
Boy, we are all very busy. And that was, Patty, that was probably the biggest hindrance, the biggest thing that I found donors having a challenge with. The intentions were there. They were just busy. They're busy working, raising kids, retired, playing golf, vacationing, traveling, volunteer. They're busy with so many things. And
Right.
charitable giving often falls down on the priority list of to-dos, not because they're bad people, just because life is happening. So how can we help them in a way that doesn't take up too much of their time? Yeah, what were you gonna say?
I'm going to say what I find with, for those of you who don't know, I'm a wealth advisor. So I do this much of what Erin does.
Yeah, but that's perfect.
Well, yeah, we
Complementary.
work very well together.
Yeah,
Um, but what I find is people don't have no idea what's available. So it's education, right? But on top of that, now it's education plus time availability, so how do we get that information to clients when they have time to be available? So you all, as you're watching this is on recording. Who knows when you want to watch it? Might be 2:30 in the morning when you woke up. So we're hoping that this is exactly what I intended the podcast to do, is make you aware of the resources that are out there. So remember, it's for those who need help, those who give help, and those who help the helpers. Erin's team at the Give Team help the helpers. They together we do a lot of education. Many people. One of my favorites is I had this guy who bought Apple at $6 a share back in the day. And it was so overweighted his portfolio, but he felt handcuffed to it. We were able to find a strategy, if you will, how to sell that asset without getting killed in taxes, right? And then deploying some of it to him and his family and some to charity, or some to charity later, but not now, right?
yep.
I
There
know
are
you
a
do
lot
that.
of really great planning vehicles. And really, what we see our role is as complementary to the financial advisor. We're actually
Uh-huh.
helping lots of helpers, if we're going to use that terminology right. So we help financial advisors provide charitable planning resources to their clients. We help clients become better at charitable planning, more purposeful, thoughtful, intentional, impactful now, not
Yeah.
forever from now, as much
Right.
as possible. And we don't want to replace what the financial advisors like you do. We're not
No,
going to
we're
say,
good
sell this
dovetails.
asset, put it in this vehicle. Exactly. But what you do so well. And so I want you to keep doing that, but leading the conversation with your clients around, okay, now we have this opportunity. You have these assets in this vehicle. What are you going to do with it? How can we help
Mhm.
support you move into your purpose and your vision for
Exactly.
the great
Or
work this
become
can do? And that's where we come in.
unleashed. Yeah, or become
Exactly.
unleashed finally from these great assets, but you can't move them because of tax situations. Some
Right,
people don't
right.
care, right? You find this, my first two questions when we start talking about this, do you need income? And some people say yes, some people say no. Do you need the tax break? Some people say yes, some people say no. And you know this. Those are two different conversations, right?
Yeah. But a lot of folks have a lot of generosity. Americans are the most generous on the planet. The vast majority of Americans give in some way. Your clients, as those financial advisors, so many of them are giving, and you might not even realize it. Because a
Uh-huh.
lot of advisors don't have that conversation. They don't say, they don't ask the kinds of questions to find out what sort of charitable giving they're doing and why and those motivations. But I'd love to tell you a little bit about. I explained like what is the problem, what is the challenge, how are we
Sure.
different? Can I share a little bit about what the
Please
process
do.
looks
Please do.
like so that
Yes,
folks can really understand how approachable this is and can imagine themselves in those shoes? So
exactly. That's perfect.
great. So, we work really closely with financial advisors, sometimes referrals from estate planners, right? Whenever the conversation is ripe for charitable giving and they want a little support, we're a great option to bring into that conversation. And we keep those advisors, those professional advisors in the meetings with the clients because it's your client, it's not ours. And again, we're not managing assets. So we invite the advisors to join those meetings that we run. We run 2 meetings over the course of 1 month. So if you remember
Okay.
the 3 things that we said are needed to become a thoughtful, purposeful, intentional giver, we do steps 1 and 3. Remember step number 2, budget vehicle assets. I'm leaving that to you, Patty. That's your job. uh,
Right.
you do that. But where my team and I are best suited, we're going to help with steps 1 and 3. Okay. So our first meeting we call the reflection session. It's 75 minutes on Zoom with an individual or a couple. A lot of times that advisor joins us. And clients can just show up. They don't have to do any pre work. We're very mindful that they're very busy people. So they can show up. We start by talking a little bit about where they've given in the recent past so we can learn about their giving history. And
Right.
then we spend the majority of our time walking them through an interactive exercise I developed with my colleagues at Stanford talking about their values, the causes that are important to them. And in that time, we actually draft a charitable mission statement. We, the
That's awesome.
family, we, the family, blah, 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 value A, B, and C. These are our values. We want to, through our charitable efforts, we fund this, that, and the other in this region serving these populations, right? So it's not going to be education and homelessness. It's going to be more specific than that. We
Uh-huh.
aim to support children from middle school all the way through career launching. It might be as specific as that. Or we aim to support low income women through economic mobility, sustainable economic mobility. It's going to be something that's really specific and personal to those
Uh-huh.
individuals.
So first you look for the cause.
Yeah, well, we start with your values because we have to know what you care
Got it.
about because
Right.
I'm not bringing any agenda to the conversation. My job is to listen, to reflect back, to help bring 2 viewpoints of couples sometimes together, to have a shared vision for what they want to do, but it's all based on what their values are. And then I'm helping guide them through, or my colleagues are helping guide them through those conversations to come up with this strategy.
Uh-huh.
And we ask those follow-up questions so that we can get to a level of specificity. A lot of donors don't realize what they have in mind is a direct service organization, not a research organization. Or, in fact, what they're looking for is an organization focused on long-term impact, not short-term solutions. And so we're digging deep into all of those in just 75 minutes to really understand the world of possibilities for that individual or couple. So that's our first meeting.
And I bet they walk away with from that meeting being so energized. They
Yeah.
finally
Yeah.
understand what they're trying to do,
Yep.
and they understand each other, right?
Mhm.
Maybe that
Yep.
husband and wife never had this conversation.
Oh boy, Patty, those are some of the most fun conversations where we sometimes are working with couples who they look at each other like, I had no idea you felt that way. Or,
No, that
oh,
happens all the time. I know
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then of course there are the couples who like answer each other's sentences, finish each other's sentences. And they're like, I knew you were gonna pick that one, so I picked this one, you know. But those are great, great moments. And we learn so much, and the advisor learns so much about their client too, which is really fun because then they can pick up on those threads as well. So and some of those folks will use that mission statement as a guiding legacy document or
That's what I was gonna say.
something for
Yeah,
their
yeah,
kids, a
exactly.
conversation starter.
I
It's
was
really
gonna ask you
powerful.
about that
Yeah.
because a lot of clients that I speak with, and I'm sure you as well, want to at least share their values. They don't wanna, in Orange County, there's a lot of people who, the trust fund baby syndrome, right? They don't wanna create that. So they want to enable. I don't know, there's some quote about Warren Buffett that they wanna enable their children
Yeah.
to do well
Yes.
and to do good, right?
Yes. Yes.
So this is a
Yeah.
I'm so happy to hear. Guys, I'm learning about some of this for the first time as well.
Yeah.
Erin and I have known each other
Yeah.
for a very long time,
Yeah.
but
We
this is
have.
the first time we've dug
Yeah.
this deep. So I'm
Yeah.
very
So
excited. Okay.
so that's the first meeting. And I mean, my husband and I we've gone through this process ourselves, and we actually printed off our charitable mission statement, superimposed over a family photo that we have
Oh,
framed in our living room. So here's our
what a
family.
great idea.
Here's what we care about, and this is how we show that impact and that support. We
Oh
put
my gosh. I've got to do
from
this with you. All right.
right?
You have a new
Yeah.
client.
It's also honestly great for advisors to go through this process,
Uh-huh.
and because they can then frame something and put it in their background. It's something they can talk about with their clients. Not to say you should care about what I care about, but do you see how powerful this is?
Right.
This is grounding. This is how I remember and stay connected to my personal mission of how I want to give back in the world and the legacy I want to have.
This
So
is amazing, Erin. I am so pleased with this. I can't tell
yes.
you.
So we get a lot done in 75 minutes. And that's one of the overwhelming feelings too. Wow, that was so efficient. We got so much done. It's clear, it's good clarity. It absolutely represents who we are and what we care about. So that's the first meeting. Then 1 month later, we come back together for an hour, another 60-minute session. And in this meeting, we're presenting a PowerPoint deck of 9 to 12 nonprofits that we've handpicked for them based on those charitable priorities. So in that first session, they said they want to fund, college access, and then they wanted to fund, food insecurity. Whatever their three, maybe it's three topics. A lot of people pick three. It's a nice, convenient
Okay.
number. So
Right.
then we come back together and say, okay, for college access, here are 3 or 4 charities that fit those criteria, and we provide a write up for each organization. This is not a 100-page document. Nobody wants that. This is going to be one slide and a lot of notes that says, this is the mission. This is why we picked this one for you. It does this, that, and the other that you mentioned is important. They work with specifically the population. Oh, they have volunteer activities that you can do with your kids. You were
Which is so
looking,
important.
right? Sometimes
Mhm.
they're looking for board service opportunities. Oh, this is who you would contact. Their board turnovers in April or whatever. And here are their programs. Here's the impact that they've had. Here's a link to their annual report. Here's the person you would contact if you want to have a conversation. Here's how much you might give to them, a grant range, because a lot of donors don't know how, like, to right size the gift. And so
Uh-huh.
we know, okay, well, here's your total budget. You already are funding these two, your kids' school and your whatever religious group maybe. And
Uh-huh.
so here are You might pick out of the 9 organizations, maybe you pick 4. So of the remaining budget, how might you divide that up? So we help
Okay.
them think about a grant range, 10 to 20K, 50K plus, whatever that might be. Um, and we talk about each of those. We provide them with a framework for what do I do next? How do I move forward and make a decision?
Uh-huh.
We also, you mentioned teaching at the beginning of we do a lot of teaching, how to be a good donor, how to show up
Uh-huh.
and meet a new organization and expectation setting. We do all of this in 1 hour, and we provide them with these recommendations. And I can tell you a little bit about where the recommendations come from, but generally, we end up recommending hyper local, smaller nonprofits. And there are
I like
two
that.
really important reasons why. Obviously, if that doesn't mesh with somebody's preferences, we're not going to force that upon them. But
Sure.
most cases, that is what is preferred. The reason being, for donors that have been giving reactively, any organization they fund, they probably have a personal relationship with because they went to the zoo, they go to the library, they went to that school. So to
Uh-huh.
give to a new organization that you've never seen, felt, touched, engaged with, it's harder. So I
Uh-huh.
want to find something that you could drive to, that you could get to know, so you're more likely to stick with it. So you have a chance to form a personal connection. That's the first
Uh-huh.
reason. The
Yep.
second reason for our strategy of the smaller organizations is we're working with donors with a wide range of budgets, but even if they're giving away a 500,000 per year, they don't do that to one nonprofit. So
Huh?
they're going to cut that check smaller and smaller because they fund 15 groups.
Right.
So
Right.
how do I right size a 10K gift or a 25K gift? I want to look for an organization that has a smaller budget, so that gift is so important. You are a major donor. The minute you show up, you're going to feel
Yeah.
the love. You're going to feel the impact. This is really important. This isn't
Huh?
you can be your own Mackenzie Scott Bill Gates, in your own way. And that's really meaningful. So that's why we recommend organizations sort of with that in mind. It's not right
Uh-huh.
for everybody. There are exceptions, of course, but most of the time that's what we do.
And you
And
could bring the kids.
yeah, I know,
The
exactly.
volunteer activities,
Yep.
you could be a
Need to be
tool
Yep,
for you to
exactly.
teach your kids, your grandkids, this is what's important.
Yep,
We think beyond ourselves,
yep, yep,
make the world a
exactly,
better place, right?
exactly. Yep. So in order to come up with our recommendations, we actually build custom regional databases of nonprofits all across the US.
Okay.
Nobody else does this. This is incredibly unique. Now you may
Well, you
remember.
are a researcher.
Yes, correct. And you may also remember that at the very beginning, I said I used to run GuideStar's strategy. GuideStar, I think many of your readers know or your listeners know,
Yeah.
has the largest database of nonprofits in the country. I don't use GuideStar to find organizations. Okay. I find the organizations and then we use GuideStar to pre-populate what's their mission statement, where are they located, right?
Sure.
But
Sure.
to find them in the first place, I don't use GuideStar. We use our own proprietary databases that we build with our own methodology of what we think thoughtful organizations are doing work in different communities. Our database now has more than 25,000 organizations across the United States.
That's
And these
amazing,
are
isn't it?
mostly smaller organizations working in local communities. Um, we also work with donors that have multiple communities of interest. They might have a second home, or the grandkids live over here and they're spending half their time there. And so we often will advise on multiple local geographies, which is a little bit unique too. So um, our engagement process, 2 meetings over the course of 1 month, and they walk away with a charitable mission statement, organizations that have been handpicked for them, and then the goal is to help them get across that finish line, nudge them until they can make some new gifts. The
Uh-huh.
advisor helps with that sort of accountability, keeping them on the rails, keeping them on
Right.
track. We follow up. How's it going? We never move money because we don't have access to financial accounts. We don't want that. You do that if you want, Patty, to help them, deploy those resources. But our goal is to help donors give thoughtfully, give intentionally, and give more quickly
I
than they
love
otherwise
I
would.
love that. And working together with me or other advisors out there, I suggest you call her. Um, because once they have these conversations with you, then they they know, hey, this is what I want to give, this is who I want to give it to. Now I look at the assets, right?
Right.
What is
Exactly.
the most efficient way?
Correct.
It's rarely cash, but
Yeah.
sometimes it is. And there are really wonderful ways to look at portfolios or net worth statements and say, you should give this,
Yeah.
right?
Actually, that's an interesting point, Patty. There are lots of ways to come up with what's the right number, and there's no exact formula, of course. There are lots of things to consider, like how much do you need to live on in retirement? Do you have enough saved? What do you want to pass on to your kids or other, right? There's so many factors. However, one of the cheat sheet kind of ways, like sort of the ones that I like to just throw out as a starting point. If advisors don't know how to start this conversation with their clients, now you know your client's situation better than I do. So, you know, use your discretion. I'm not a licensed tax or financial professional, but if you think about someone's total liquid net worth, not their house, nobody's selling their house to give money to charity. So, liquid net worth. If you hire a financial advisor, let's just say 1% of your liquid net worth every year is going to that advisor. Sure. Is it more? Is it less? Let's just pretend it's 1%. If you
Okay.
can afford to hire a financial planner, which you should be doing, um, and that's sort of 1% of your liquid net worth, what if you also gave away 1% of your liquid net worth every year? Let's
I
just,
know. It
what
would
would that be
so
like?
move the needle,
Would
right?
that be really a big jump for some people? Yes. Would it be underselling some people? Probably. Maybe some people are more generous than that. But I just think it's an interesting place to start the
I
conversation because
agree. I
are
agree.
they losing sleep over paying you for the important advice that you're giving? No, of course they can afford that. They wouldn't think twice about that. They see the value. Why not just what's one more 1%? You know what I mean? So
I think that's a great number to start with.
yeah,
That's that's an easy way to understand, right?
yeah, yep, yep.
Just
So, and I think the other
double
thing
what you're giving Patty or,
yeah, right,
Susie
like,
or
well, think
Joe
about
or
that same sort of amount, like, what if you gave that same amount to charity every year?
I
Well,
think that's a great idea.
yeah,
I like
I
that
think
a
it would
lot.
unleash a lot more generosity, um,
Right.
and most folks can't afford that, and they would feel good. I mean, so many times we have these sessions with clients, and, they come out of these meetings saying things like, "Oh, I wish I had more to give," or, "Oh, I wish I could give to all of these organizations. This is incredible," or they light up when they hear about
They do.
organizations
They
doing
do.
work
It's
aligned with what they care
fulfilling.
to I had no idea that was out there. I had no
Mhm,
idea, right?
mhm. I see that, and I love that. That's your focus, one of your
Yeah,
focus. I
right.
mean, that in financial planning, I'm sure other people do this as well. It's we want you to have a better life. So it is not just, make more money, which of
No,
course we do, but it's like, how couldn't, and often this is at, the last 20 years of life, right? They're looking at estate plans, they're looking at this. Let's now do a value focus, right?
yeah, yeah.
And I love, love, love. I now know more about Aaron. I love this so
Yay.
much. Aaron, we
Thanks,
just have
Patty.
a couple more minutes. Is there one thing, if you had only one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, as I think about your audiences and my audiences, there are many different sort of stakeholders, right? And so advice is a little bit different for each of those stakeholders. So
Sure.
maybe I will offer up one piece of advice to three different stakeholders. So
Okay, tell me.
my advice to the financial advisors out there, sort of that professional advisor stakeholder, is to not shy away from the charitable conversation. Um, just don't assume you have to have every answer, but you want to open up the conversation to what do you care about? What change do you want to see in the world? What legacy do you want to have? Open up the door to have the
Do you
conversation.
know the numbers for that stats that this many people want to have the conversation with their
Yeah,
advisor on
their
charity,
financial
and
advisor and
this
their
many
advisor is
people
not doing it.
actually do? Do you know
Yeah.
the
Off the
numbers?
top of my head, I mean, it's on all of my slides. It is, I don't wanna give a misquote, but it's like, it
Approximately.
yeah, 70%, 80% of clients want to be talking about this, and they say that, only 30% of the time or something, like, advisors aren't bringing it up, they're the ones bringing it up, and they're not having these conversations. It's a very stark contrast.
It
Um
is. I think that on the advisor side, and I think the question is, would you be comfortable with having a conversation, or are you currently having conversations? It's less than 10%.
Yeah. And
So
and
I
that
encourage
that is
my
like that what
brothers and sisters to
Mhm. Yes.
embolden yourselves because
Yeah.
this is important.
And then
Okay.
for the nonprofits out there, I would say we didn't talk too much about this. This could be for another conversation, but on the
Sure.
nonprofit side, I think about this quite a bit. What piece of advice I would give to them,
Uh-huh.
and I would say I see a lot of challenges in terms of expectation setting on the donor side and on the nonprofit side. And so
Okay.
what I always recommend is that
Explain
non
that.
yeah, okay. So if we have another minute, I'll explain.
I'll give you
So
I'll give you more.
um, so one of the challenges I see is on the donor side. They are afraid if I share my information, they're going to bombard me with all of this additional
Uh-huh.
solicitation. They're going to keep asking me. They're going to send me all of this paper. They're wasting money. They're going to invite me to events. I don't want to go to events. I just want to give, or I want to right. Like or I reached out to them and they never called me back, or they never emailed me back. I'm like, oh no, So these are challenges I see on the donor side. On the nonprofit side, I see nonprofits wanting to steward, wanting to support, but what happens sometimes is donors don't communicate their wishes. And so nonprofits assume a certain engagement
Sure.
strategy and
Sure.
style. And what I would love to see more of is a new donor comes into your family nonprofit. And I would love for that nonprofit to reach out and say, we're so excited to have your support. Thank you so much. There's so many ways to engage in our work. Here are 7 options. Please let us know how you would like to be engaged, right? Do
That's a
you want
great
to be
idea.
invited to events? Do you want us to send you paper mailers? Why don't you ask? And then you can provide the engagement that that person wants.
So
And at the
smart.
same time, on the donor side, I say, please over communicate because they can't read your mind. So if you don't want to be added to the mailing list or you don't want to be included on the donor roll, please tell them that because they're not going to know that automatically. They can't read your
Right.
mind. So
Right.
I just encourage more over communication on both parts. And my horror story is please, nonprofits, provide an email address on your website to a human being who checks their email regularly. I can't tell you how many nonprofits I have recommended, and donors have reached out to them to confirm something or other, and they never hear back from the organization. I mean, it was a layup. So
Yeah.
don't be that organization. Be responsive and make sure you have an easy, not a contact form, an email address to a human being who's going to be responsive. Because I'm trying to make it easy for you just to have the money come on in and not have to do anything to bring on these donors. So
Right.
those
Right.
are some of my tips that I'll leave you with.
Mind blown. I think this is so exciting. And we'll, of course, talk more offline. But I think we need to have an Erin 2.0.
Okay.
We'll get
Sounds
another
good.
conversation going. So for all of you who have taken the time to watch, or maybe you're listening to this as you're jogging, I hope this was important to you. I hope you found value. If you think there is, we're going to have this on the recording on the website. Refer your friends saying, "Hey, had you thought of this?" So we'll make it give you a QR code or whatever. That's the tech team. I don't do that. But thank you for taking your time. I'm Patti Parker with my friends in philanthropy. And thank you very much, Erin, for being my friend today.
Thank you, Patty. I really appreciate it. It was wonderful being in conversation with you, and I hope to hear from some of your listeners soon.
I hope so. I
You
hope so. Bye,
take care.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to my friends in philanthropy. If you'd like to learn more about any of the organizations or services we've talked about, visit myfriendsinphilanthropy.com. You'll find all the links and all the details there or in the description below. If you or someone you know needs support, please don't hesitate to reach out. And if you're in a position to give, consider donating or volunteering. Your generosity truly makes a difference. I'm Patti Parker, and I can't wait to share more inspiring stories with you next time.